What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Big Dave. Welcome back to another episode of Culture Dad's Age of Sword Set. What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about something, speaking of things that Big Dave is all about and gets fired up about, here's one thing that Big Dave probably gets fired up the most about and have been since I was probably 5 years old. And that is heavy metal. So we're going to talk not just heavy metal, because if we just did heavy metal, we'd be here for 6 hours. You guys would be getting a 6-hour monstrous episode that nobody would have time to listen to. So we are going to talk about a more specific new phenomenon in the genres of heavy metal, and that is new wave of traditional heavy metal. So Mr. Mike, when I told you about new wave of traditional heavy metal, what came to your mind?
To be honest, it was, I think, pretty close to what you ended up giving me when you handed me the playlist. I was picturing like something like 3 Inches of Blood, or like, you know, a modern take on stuff like Iron Maiden, or like Motorhead, new wave of British heavy metal, basically, or Judas Priest style stuff. I was just basically, because I know that there is a revival of that. I was aware of this. You know, I work with some of these bands, right? Like some bands that like were doing this. And so I was aware that this was going on. And it was like, this is like the original genre is something a little bit like, you know, like I said, off the beaten path for me. Like, this is not something that was like my thing or whatever, but it was, it was like, I was aware that it was going through a revival. And I really actually enjoyed it, and it's very masterful from a technical standpoint. There's some very good songs. It feeds into some of the metal that I really do love, like Metallica, early Metallica, and thrash, and death metal, and black metal, and things like that. It's adjacent to a lot of that. So, yeah, when you described it to me, I was like, I just pretty much knew exactly what I was in store for. When you say new wave of traditional heavy metal, I just pictured like, you know, Manowar 4.0 basically, right? Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah. So that's exactly what it is. So when we're talking about a new wave of traditional heavy metal, there's actually some people out there, you're talking about nerds, that have issue with calling this traditional heavy metal, because to them, when you say traditional heavy metal, they want to talk about Led Zeppelin. They want to obviously talk about Black Sabbath. They want to talk about Deep Purple, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And while those bands are absolutely like pro-metal, right? I actually have some on the playlist. I left some out because I knew obviously Black Sabbath before. Yeah, I don't need to put Black Sabbath on there. You've heard Led Zeppelin before. I don't need to put Led Zeppelin on there. There are other bands that were kind of proto heavy metal that deserve to be mentioned, right? There were some Detroit bands that came out. Was it the MC5? That was kind of metallic. You had Blue Cheer, which was a band that used a lot of heavy stuff. Cream, I believe, deserved a lot of the psychedelic stuff. Steppenwolf, Iron Butterfly, a lot of these bands that started slowing down and getting heavier and sludgier, and using some of the more darker notes that are involved in the pentatonic scale, and started to move away from the blues scale a little bit, but they were still very much blues, a blues type of music, right? They still was at the 1-4-5 progression of blues. Yep. It was blues rock kind of stuff, and the early Proto-Metal was very much in this vein. You know, like I mentioned, you have the psychedelic and acid rocks of the time. You have, you know, all of those bands that I mentioned. We're going to let's skip over Jerry Lee Lewis and Elvis and all of this, you know, the early guys of rock and roll. You guys can go anywhere on the internet and find the complete history of all that. But getting into the early days of heavy metal, obviously there's a few bands I think that really need to get mentioned. And I usually exclude Led Zeppelin from this because Led Zeppelin, although they added a lot of folky elements and they sounded kind of heavy and they had some stuff in there, they actually reject the term heavy metal. They hate it. They don't want to be called heavy metal. They're rock and roll. They actually really don't like being called that. There are other bands that are kind of in the mix that really contributed to that sound. And kind of the main ones that I mentioned, obviously you could talk about Dave Davies from the Kinks and some of his contributions, right? He was the first guy to damage his speaker. He actually took a razor blade and sliced into the speaker on his amp to make distortion, right? So he was like the first guy to really add distortion with the first British rock invasion. So you fast forward, the two kind of bands that I would say these guys were the OG metal, one, Deep Purple, and two, Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath was the first heavy metal band as we know it, right? They had all of the elements that we define as metal. And not only that, from various eras and riffs and elements of Black Sabbath and the mastermind of Tony Iommi, came multiple metal genres, right? Doom and stoner, and then you get thrash is obviously comes out of that family. Death metal, the early death metal bands were all like Black Sabbath fanatics. Chris Barnes from Cannibal Corpse was like, he's like admitted like his top 5 favorite band or albums are all Black Sabbath albums, like this kind of stuff. So Black Sabbath goes on and sires many, many children in the heavy metal family. So fast forward from that, Black Sabbath is the first one to kind of play and kind of admit, they say, yeah, we are heavy metal. That term didn't exist yet, but it got applied to us, and post hoc they're okay with that title. However, they say, we do some other stuff that isn't pure metal. We had some psychedelic stuff. We had some very folky passages. We had a lot of stuff going on that you couldn't necessarily say that we were purely a metal band. We were like metal before metal. So the first bands to say, yo, we are metal was new wave of British heavy metal. Coming out of that, obviously after the 70s hard rock bands that I mentioned kind of started to decline, which, there were some of these bands, if you watch a documentary, they'll be like, all of these bands died and disco came. There's many bands that continued making great albums. Black Sabbath made great albums going through their history. They had many different vocalists throughout their time, and they kept going and going and going. So don't think that Black Sabbath ended with Ozzy. It didn't. They did an album with Ian Gillan. They had Tony Martin. They had Dio. They had so many great eras. So don't think that Black Sabbath died. Go check out the deep cuts from Black Sabbath, and you will find a lot of really great gems from
Dio. Sabbath is really classic, man. Like it doesn't quite stand up to the early the early Ozzy stuff, but it's awesome.
It's different. It's a different era. Like guys like, oh well, you got to think they were playing that style for 15 years, over a decade. So it's like, what are they going to do? Just keep playing the same thing over and over again? And they got this new singer who has his own vibe and his own way, and you got to let him shine. So Iommi wrote songs that would help make Dio shine. So it's awesome. If you don't like the Heaven and Hell album, there's something wrong with you. It's still Black Sabbath, and it's phenomenal music. It's beautiful, awesome, some of the best music ever written. So
Dio's such a great vocalist too. I mean, from a pure technical standpoint, he's superior to Ozzy. Maybe not in terms of the vibe and the authenticity and all the stuff that goes into being a singer that has to do outside of just your range and everything. But as far as the technical aspects of being a singer, Dio is amazing. He's one of the greats. So yeah.
Ozzy doesn't even deserve to be in the same room as Dio. Let's.
I don't know about that. But yeah, Dio like runs circles around him in terms of like just his vocal range, his timbre, to the tonality of his voice and everything like that. I mean, Ozzy's got that certain something. There's a kind of, a X factor that he's got that like is even superior to Dio, but that's hard to talk about because it's so subjective.
Yeah, well, the Ozzy versus here's the thing. Ozzy, his contributions in early Sabbath are extremely meaningful. They're like, it's like the beginning of everything. Yeah. However, outside of that, Ozzy doesn't really, you take Ozzy's solo career and like press a button and make it vanish, nothing really changes. Dio, if you vanish any era of Dio, it is a huge loss. That guy was just, we're going to talk about, don't worry, we will talk about
Dio. We'll get there.
We'll get there. So I gave Mike this, I created a absolutely monstrous list and I trimmed it down to 40 songs.
You trimmed it down to a paltry 40 songs. Nigga, you gave me 4 hours worth of shit to listen to.
I'm sorry.
And I listened to all of it.
My man. So
Bro.
So we're gonna run through the playlist here, and you guys out there that are listening, check out these bands. This is I gave Mike a timeline that leads up to new wave of traditional heavy metal. But some bands I left off because I'm not going to make Mike listen to Lord of This World or Paranoid or Fairies Wear Boots and the original Black Sabbath. He's heard all that shit. So there's a few bands that I left out because everybody's already heard it. Everybody's already heard the Led Zeppelin, et cetera, et cetera. So I started out this thing with a track off of Deep Purple's Machine Head. And Mike, have you heard this song before?
I hadn't heard the song. It was kind of funny because my and it was like, she was in the room with me while I was working out, and she was like, "Oh, the rainbow! I love the rainbow, Daddy." but then she was like, "I don't know if I like this." Like as soon as she heard it, right? But then by the end of the song, she was like dancing and just like totally like vibing it and everything. So it was hilarious. But yeah, no, I hadn't heard this before. I mean, I'm aware of Rainbow, but I haven't like listened to them before. So this is Dio in his prime, right? This is him like as a young dude, basically.
Yeah. So the first song I put on was off of Machine Head, Deep Purple. And while this is not quite.
Wait a minute. That was the first one? Hold on a second.
Highway Star.
Okay, because there were so you gave me this playlist, but there was 3 songs that I couldn't listen to because I was geo-blocked by some like thing. So I must have missed that. Okay. Now I know Highway Star. I know that one.
Yeah. So that album is just hugely important. It's Ritchie Blackmore and Ian Gillan kind of this was like the heaviest hard rock at the time. You know what I mean? This was like, if you go watch like the Deep Purple live videos, you got guys headbanging, and it looks a little funny because this is like before headbanging was formulated and people didn't really know how to headbang, so there's kind of like flailing their hair around like maniacs. But it had that vibe. It was intense. It was virtuosic. It had lots of different complexities. It was fast. It had that deep bass. It had fast drums. Ian Gillan brought the soaring vocals and the screams. Yeah. It had mythopoetic themes a little bit, but it was still very much a groovy, funky, bluesy kind of thing.
That's definitely a bluesy cut, that one.
It still fucks, though. It's still this would be one of my Desert Island albums. So fast forward Deep Purple, keep Ritchie Blackmore, keep Roger Glover, the bass player, and Deep Purple breaks up. I can't remember off the top of my head what their last album together was called. Actually has a rainbow and there's like a Pegasus. Ritchie Blackmore hated this album. Ritchie Blackmore is he's like one of the people ever in music. Dio will come out. You can watch interviews where Dio says he spits on fans. He fights people. He has meltdowns and tantrums. He's just a nasty, not a nice guy, obsessed with music. Brilliant guitar player, songwriter, terrible person, like just not a nice guy, just a mean guy full of piss and vinegar. But his music is excellent, and he's such an important guy. So fast forward to Rainbow. Rainbow actually, believe, started with David Coverdale as their original vocalist, and I can't remember if they started with him or they went later with him, but the most important era of Rainbow is Dio. And why the original Rainbow is so important, I just watched, to freshen up on everything, I watched a heavy metal documentary last night, right? I turned it on. One thing that I noticed is throughout the documentary, there's like five guys that get interviewed wearing Rainbow Rising t-shirts. Nobody else. There was no doubles of t-shirts anywhere else. 5 different guys were wearing Rainbow Rising t-shirts that were getting interviewed to talk about heavy metal. This is how influential this was. And the reason that Rainbow is so influential is, number one, they took all of the vibe and sound from Deep Purple that was heavy metal. You add Dio and you put Blackmore and Dio together. First of all, Blackmore, from the get-go, he was trying to de-blues rock and roll. He was trying to get away from rock and roll, get away from blues, and inject medieval music. In fact, Ritchie Blackmore's current thing that he does is called Blackmore's Night, where they play more electric medieval style music. He is a guy that likes medieval music. You can hear the scales in this song, particular Stargazer, where he's getting into like Arabic scales and stuff that sounds kind of Indo-European and Eastern. He's getting away from pentatonic. Dio in Rainbow changes the game because now he makes heavy metal, makes rock and roll mythopoetic. He writes songs about ancient legends and dragons and wizards and magic and fantasy. And this is a huge, important development. They didn't do this before. Dio is a guy that comes, first of all, he has a very strong attachment to the old world. He is a first generation Italian immigrant. His parents are very superstitious, and he has this connection to the old world. He's a very well-read guy. He's also a guy that's really big into pulp and science fiction and Edgar Rice Burroughs and Conan and Tolkien. He's a Tolkien obsessed. He is a literature obsessed, imaginative man that loves ancient times. He's actually comes from a background of opera. He, being an Italian guy, he loves opera, Pavarotti. He listens, his main vocal influences, he talks about Mario Lanza and Italian tenors like that. So he draws from this kind of like old world of music, which was nowhere near popular at the time and was only encapsulated with him through his ancestry. So he kind of ties all of this together to make metal mythopoetic with his storytelling and all of this kind of stuff. And this theme stays with metal and becomes woven into what makes metal great and what makes metal very, very folkish and European. It gives it that vibe. So another band that never gets mentioned that also did this, I put this on the list, was Wizard's Vengeance. But before we, Mr. Mike, you liked, what did you think about Rainbow and Wizard's Vengeance by Legend?
Yeah, it was good for me to be introduced to that because I've heard some of the like earlier Dio stuff before, but I hadn't heard this one. And yeah, you're right. It definitely has like that sort of Eastern vibe to it at certain points in the song, like a Phrygian tonality going on. Yeah, it's a great bridge from like the 70s, like Zeppelin and Deep Purple style rock into what we're going to be talking about, which is kind of like more or less the new wave of British heavy metal, and sort of beyond that as well. But it was really cool. Obviously, Dio's an amazing vocalist. And I'm glad that you mentioned the sort of like old world, the tie to the old world that he has, because you probably are familiar with the anecdote of how he came up with the horns, right? Like the metal horns. Which is like for the audience. you probably know the story better than I do, Dave, but basically this was like a sign that was used by, I think, his grandmother or something to vex people, to basically curse them. Like she would like take the two fingers on either side of the hand and point them at like a stranger or somebody that like she wanted to like curse. And basically this was her way of doing that, is the sign of the devil, which of course became a fixture in heavy metal. So we've got the like, the semiotics of heavy metal here, right? Like this is something that comes straight from like European folk culture, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, from an Italian immigrant, somebody that's like, that he's not the immigrant, but like first generation, he's got that tie, and it definitely comes into metal, and it just fits like a glove, right? This like traditional European style, this traditional like European custom or whatever. And then we get on to Legend, right? This is the Wizard's Vengeance. Is that the name of the song is Wizard's Vengeance, and the band is Legend, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this was pretty cool. I didn't dig it quite as much as I liked the Dio. There was some very good drum work and some interesting like changes of dynamics and things like that. Wasn't really my thing, but like I still enjoyed it. I think it's actually worth sort of like pausing here for a second and just talking about like my apprehension of this style of music. This is not my thing. Like this genre is something that it took me a while to get into. I do like it. I certainly love like Motorhead and like some of the new wave of British heavy metal and things like that. But I am a child of the 90s. I like, basically I was like in my early teens, maybe a little younger than that, when stuff like Nirvana and Soundgarden really hit it big. And when, for guys who are younger, it's hard to understand what a like just turning point this was for music. So before that, 1988, 89, 90, you've got a lot of like metalhead. It wasn't doing a lot of interesting stuff, at least in the mainstream. There wasn't a lot of like very, very interesting stuff going on at this time. Metal had kind of like lost a lot of its vitality by this point, at least again in the mainstream. There's always a lot of interesting stuff going on in the underground, but you get these bands that are sort of like the second wave of like hair metal and shit like that. Okay, there's Guns N' Roses, which was really cool at this time, but there's not a lot of interesting stuff going on. Metal's kind of losing steam. It's kind of starting to become really cheesy. Get the like, I don't know, Motley Crue and shit. I think Motley Crue fucking blows. I don't know. Yeah. That kind of shit like that was what was kind of going on at the time. And then you get this new thing, right? Like all of a sudden Smells Like Teen Spirit drops. I mean, that's not the Big Bang. There's a lot of history before that for grunge. This is not an episode on grunge, but basically when Smells Like Teen Spirit hit, it displaced Michael Jackson from the top of the charts. This was a band that had like sold maybe 10,000 records, and that's it. So this was a major changing of the guard, but it upended everything. It ended careers. It absolutely destroyed everything. We talked about in the last episode about the Odinic and the Tyrrhic, the creator destroyer aspect. And I think I even mentioned Nirvana. This was that, right? It just absolutely destroyed everything. This genre completely ended many, many, many careers that had been going pretty strong up until this point, right? And when this hit, this was like I would have been 11 years old when Nevermind came out. I was ready for it. This was like, I loved this shit, right? Like, so I was into grunge. That was my thing when I was a kid. And so by default, the thing that it replaced was gay, right? Like I was just not into it. I didn't really like metal. When the Metallica Black album dropped, I did like that, and that started me on to a sort of like looking a little bit further back. You get into like Master of Puppets, and then Slayer. I bought whatever the '94 Slayer album was. I forget what that was.
Was it Seasons in the Abyss?
No, it was the one after that. I forget what it's called.
Diablos and Musica?
No, I can't remember.
South of Heaven?
This is going to kill me. It was 1994. I can always remember the fucking years of all this shit, but I can't remember the name of the album. Anyway, it was not one of the ones that's like one of their classic ones. And I enjoyed it. I was like, this is fucking extreme, but it was too much for me. Anyway, I didn't get into Slayer until quite a bit later.
Fine Intervention.
That's it, yeah. But when I got it, I really got it. But yeah, metal was sort of like, I liked it, but it wasn't like at the center of, and it's never quite been at like the center of like my musical taste. I found a lot of it cheesy. A lot of it was just like really cringy to me. Like I remember like my friends and I, coming up the 90s, being like, edgy 90s kids, like the typical sort of Gen X slacker, ironic attitude towards everything. We thought that heavy metal was just cheesy as fuck, and like the soaring vocals and everything were just like, it was too much. It was like a put on, right? It just didn't seem authentic to us. And it wasn't until much later that I really got it, actually. It took me quite a while, but I did eventually get it. And so going and listening through this playlist was a lot of sort of unexplored material. There was a lot of uncharted territory for me, which was really cool. It's nice to discover something new. But like that genre is not really my cup of tea. But it's interesting because there was a lot of shit that I was like, I don't like Judas Priest. And then I listened to like the stuff that you like, the track that you put on there, and that was like amazing. We'll come to that. But yeah, so I think Legend and like Wizard's Vengeance by the band Legend, which is the track that we're talking about, it's still kind of like makes me think of a little bit of the cheese, like the 80s cheese. It's obviously much earlier. It's not like the shitty Poodle fucking, Motley Crue hair metal shit, but it just wasn't for me. It was okay. I thought that like the instrumental performances were pretty decent, especially the drummer. There was some good dynamics going on, but there was other things that I thought were better on that list.
Yeah, Legend. Actually, it's not a great album. They're really not a great band, but they're a band of note because this album From the Fjords was it was in that Dio vein where they're singing about the mythopoetic stuff, and this is like before metal was really a thing, so they didn't even like really know what they were doing. They were it was still kind of blues rock with some folky elements, and like they weren't really that special, but they are a band of note because they were doing something that didn't happen yet. So that's why I put that on there. It's not great. It's not something that you're going to be, oh man, Legend, it's my favorite, but it's good. It's like, wow, this was something that was ahead of its time. So,
dude, I made you listen to a guy banging on the inside of a metal pipe while a train went overhead. So yeah, I don't think that I'm one to talk and be like, that sucked.
Yeah, but as you were mentioning, if you want to talk about kind of like the evolution of things, there's this weird evolution. It's kind of this tension between metal and punk and corporatization, right? In the 70s, like you mentioned, there's like we were talking about, you have your hard rock bands and they start going down, and then they kind of get replaced by this more corporate bullshit and disco and like all this
REO Speedwagon.
Yeah, this like arena rock type stuff.
Yeah.
And you know what? Some of the bands were good. Like, here's the thing: you could go.
Boston was good. That they had like some good shit.
Yeah, Boston's got some good shit. There's some good bands there. Foghat, etc. But actually, the stuff that kind of replaced it was a little bit later. But it got really fast, really quick, and then in came the new wave of British heavy metal, right? And new wave of British heavy metal was a reaction to two different things. It was a reaction to kind of the really crazy prog rock that was going on. Like you had Yes, who was doing you had double albums with 15-minute songs and all of this kind of stuff. And then you also at that time had punk rock. And this time in Britain, there was a big rivalry between hard rock / heavy metal and punk rock. And punk, which obviously starts with The Clash and Sex Pistols and Sham 69 and all of the bands that were there around that time, which I'm not a punk guy. I think punk sucks, right? I'm in the metal camp. But what happened was punk kind of upped the ante on the bands that were previously there by making it faster. The punk drum beat changed everything. That changed everything, right? So the old hard rock guys weren't playing that fast. It didn't sound as aggressive. However, the guys that come out of the schools of the Deep Purples, of the Rainbow, of the Led Zeppelin, these guys were guys that wanted to bring advanced musicality. These were guys that were trained guitar players that liked complex riffs, that liked this kind of stuff, that still wanted to. They didn't like the what they viewed as pretentious prog rock kind of stuff, and they thought punk was trash. They didn't think it was good music. They thought it was kind of like a dumbing down of music, and so they came out with something that was still heavy metal, but was, because at this time you got to keep in mind, during this time the late 70s going into the early 80s in Britain, you have your Led Zeppelins, etc. But these guys are mega superstars. These guys are multi-millionaires. They got
nothing to prove.
Nothing to prove. The guys at the bottom that are in the scenes don't even, if they want to go see Led Zeppelin, they can't even afford the tickets at this point. So Led Zeppelin is completely out of their thing. What they did have were bands like Tigers of Pang Tang, Praying Mantis, Tankard, Judas Priest. This is where you get Motorhead. This is where, and what they did, the new wave of British heavy metal, or NWOBHM is what people call it, took the drum beat from punk and added hard rock to it, and that became this is the first traditional heavy metal, and this spread throughout the world. This went nuts, right? So you get Judas Priest out of it, and probably the king of all of this is Iron Maiden. But we'll get all of that. But if we want to knock out the timeline real quick, NWOBHM happened. NWOBHM kind of lost its seat to glam metal, which was fucking gay. Like Poison and Cinderella and these pieces of shit. I can't stand this garbage. But what happened? This
was what was going on when I kind of came into the music scene, when I came into mainstream music, understanding what was going on and listening to what was happening. This was kind of what was going on, and it wasn't even really the quote unquote classic era of glam metal, which is still shit. It was the shittier version of that. So by the time I came onto the scene, metal was just basically this geriatric thing that was shitty, and it just got completely bowled over by something new and exciting or whatever. So that really colored my experience with metal. It's interesting how just a few years difference can make it, because you and I, Dave, are 5-6 years apart in terms of our age. I think
I'm 35.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we're about 6 or 7 years apart. That's not a lot of time, but I think me being that age, and you being born when you were born, you didn't get to see that. You didn't get to see metal being so fucking terrible, firsthand, because by the time you probably started listening to metal, it was fucking good again. Right. You'd had bands like Pantera and the second wave of good Slayer shit and Corrosion of Conformity and Cannibal Corpse and stuff. It was metal was back, right? But anyway, it's just interesting how only a couple of years or a few years difference can make such a huge thing. But going back to the new wave of British heavy metal in the late 70s. I mean, it's a trope, but like, you know, metal and like hard rock and everything was bloated and shitty. And it was like, there was some interesting stuff, of course, but for the most part, it was kind of really like just very pretentious and self-indulgent, right? Punk comes in, slices away all that shit, just like carves it away like a fucking turkey and gets rid of everything, strips like music down to the bare bones, like cuts it right down to the bone. And it's like you could not have a more basic framework for music, but it was kind of, and it was really super aggressive, right? For the time, it sounds very tame. You listen to the Sex Pistols album today, and it just sounds like a pretty good hard rock album, like a very good hard rock album. It doesn't sound fast, it doesn't sound aggressive, but back then it did. The Ramones certainly did. And then you get like hardcore coming in around like, you know, 1980 or so, and punk starts to get very fast and aggressive. So it's just like aggression is back, right?
Yeah.
In terms of music, but it was always kind of retarded. They were never really great. I mean, Minor Threat is a good example of a punk band that had some like chops, like when they're playing and everything. And Bad Brains had like fuckloads of chops, but they were weird because they're like a reggae band, but also punk. Anyway, most of the time, like, you know, Black Flag is a very sloppy sounding band. They didn't like, they could play sort of like they could play enough to do what they needed to do. But then you get the new wave of British heavy metal. You get like this, like you say, Dave, this kind of like, you know, call and response. So like punk like issues a challenge. It's like, we're going to make music aggressive again. And metal's kind of like left in the dust, right? And then you get the new wave of British heavy metal saying, oh yeah, well, we're going to up the ante a bit. We're going to do all that same shit, but we can actually play our fucking instruments.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting that you get that. Like, what a great time that must have been to be like, you know, 16 years old in 1980 to like be listening to that and see like that scene going on between these two genres and everything. And then you get, like you say, bands like Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, and all that stuff. But anyway, we'll get to those two because there's another one that we need to talk about before then, right?
Yeah. This is a little bit out of order, but this was a band that kind of came out of nowhere, and it was in that era of new wave of British heavy metal, and they came out of Denmark, and this was Merciful Fate. Merciful Fate, a lot of guys will be familiar, was the band that King Diamond came out of, the great legend King Diamond. And Merciful Fate kind of picked up where Black Sabbath left off and made shit evil again. They were talking about occult dark stuff. They had like satanic imagery. They had they were talking about witches and warlocks and necromancy and graveyards. And you look back, it's a little cheesy now that they're talking about they're singing about haunted houses and shit. But when this dropped, this was spooky. You know what I mean? Nobody's ever heard vocals like this. This just soaring, nothing but falsetto. The complexity of the riffs. Merciful Fate has like 40 riffs in a song. It's unbelievable the amount of just like energy that they brought. And the Merciful Fate, when Merciful Fate and New Wave of British heavy metal hit American shores and got to the ears of guys like James Hetfield and Jeff Hanneman from Slayer and Gary Holt from Exodus, like this was like their shit. You know what I mean? They're like, fuck, you know, I've never heard anything like this before with the Diamond Head and Quartz and Judas Priest and then most specifically Merciful Fate. You can especially in Metallica's early riffs, you hear like blatant ripoffs of Merciful Fate riffs. Like Kirk Hammett is a knockoff of the lead guitar player from Merciful Fate. So hugely influential band. And I picked a song off of their first album. It's called Corpse Without a Soul. This is very early primordial stuff before they had good production value. And this was like the album that like freaked everybody out. What do you think about this?
It's funny because I forgot that King Diamond was the singer of Merciful Fate.
Yeah.
And this was not my cup of mead, really. It was a little too bluesy for me. And I wrote down the guy's voice sucks. I forgot it was King Diamond. I've never thought he was good, to be honest.
I love him.
He's just got like
him.
the falsetto. There's no grit to it. It's just like I don't know. It doesn't sound very masculine to me. It doesn't sound very. It just doesn't turn my crank. I don't know what it is, but there was some cool stuff about this track. It's got that twin guitar the guitar attack. It's got that like, Maiden style thing going on, which is really cool. I guess like I don't know what the timeline is with this exactly. Probably it came after Maiden, so they must have like taken it from them. But yeah, it's a little too bluesy for me because there's definitely some like blues rock elements in it. It's fast, it's aggressive, and that's cool and everything. But I just don't like blues at all, man. Somehow I like Zeppelin. I don't know how that works, but yeah. So it was a little bit too bluesy for me, and yeah, just not my thing. But I could see the influence and the importance of it. Although I don't see much influence, just based on the track that I listened to, on Kirk Hammett. I don't know. Maybe it's just the first album. Maybe Kill 'Em All or something like that. But yeah, I just doesn't really sound much like Master Puppets to me. It doesn't sound like Ride the Lightning or any of that. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, you got to go through. You got to listen. I gave you like one of the first songs. You know what I mean? Like, if you go through and you listen to their early albums, you're like, okay, now I'm hearing Metallica, right? And then when you talk about like the grit and everything, this is very early. King Diamond is just trying to figure out what his style is.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. And then later on, when you get into late Merciful Fate albums as well as early King Diamond albums, he starts becoming who he is, right? With the face paint and the production value and the weird spookiness and the kind of like, Abigail, don't you think I know what you've done? Like the weird voice stuff that he does. So, I am a huge fan of King Diamond. I got to see him live some years back. Fantastic. The guy is old enough to be my dad, and he still sounds fantastic. His shows that he puts on are still just captivating. Really, just King Diamond brought something that was a little bit lost, which was really high level theatrics to his performance as well as props, and he kind of brought like an Alice Cooper element to his production. So
was he the first one to use corpse paint?
Yes, it was. The Merciful Fate sometimes gets labeled as the first black metal band.
No, I don't think so. Doesn't sound like black metal to me. But definitely the like visual aspect of his performances, they call that to mind or whatever. And if you look at the album art of the track that you sent me, it's definitely got that like Gothic thing going on that like so much black metal pulled on, and just all metal basically after this time. Pretty much there was like basically two ways it could go, either something Gothic and like very the graveyard sort of thing going on like this, or something like more techno, like dark, like machine kind of thing or whatever. So this is obviously quite influential in the aesthetic vein, beyond just sonics, but also in the visuals too.
Yeah, big time. So moving on, I gave you two Judas Priest tracks. Now, here's the thing about Judas Priest is people hear Living After Midnight, they hear Breaking the Law, and they think that they've heard Judas Priest. And it's just not the case. Judas Priest, like Black Sabbath, has a very long timeline, big discography with a lot of evolutions. And they start out with their first album, Rockarola, which is a very blues rock kind of thing. And then you get into this album that I sent you, Sad Wings of Destiny, where they start to shed the blues elements. Yep. And they're like the first band to really use this two guitar attack with Glenn Tipton and KK Downing. This was like hugely influential. So what do you think about these two tracks here? I kind of gave you two eras. I gave you the end of because the first album, Sad Wings of Destiny, if you go watch the video, they're still kind of dressed like hippies. They kind of look like Black Sabbath. They're a little bit still 70s. And then the next one I gave is off the album Screaming for Vengeance, which is full-blown new wave of heavy metal. This is like now new wave of British heavy metal is working class. It's denim, it's leather, it's gritty, it's for the people, it's for the bros now, right? And this is two eras, and then obviously it goes further. You get they have put out a bunch of other albums. You got Stained Glass. You got then they had what was that? The one out in the 80s. They got a little bit electronic. It's not crazy. It's not like it gets gay and keyboardy, but they add some synth elements. What was the album? It was like they that song Blood Red Skies. I will fight you under blood red sky. I can't remember, but there's that album, and then Halford leaves. In comes or Halford at the end. They put out an album that's like incredible. This is Painkiller. I didn't put it on the thing because I already gave you two Judas Priest songs, but Painkiller in the 90s, like this album rules. You know what I mean? This is like they're probably their best album. So going back, what do you think of The Ripper, and what do you think of Electric Eye?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't get to hear the first one that you mentioned because it must have been geo-blocked or whatever. Because there was only one Judas Priest track that I got on this playlist, and that was the one that was like the Helion / Electric Eye. But this was the first one. No, I thought Rainbow was really good as well. This was one of the other ones early on in the playlist that I thought was actually really fucking cool. And it was good because it was, I'm not a huge fan of Judas Priest, but I really did enjoy this. There's great composition in this track. There's a complexity to it. This is structure that it's very complicated, and it goes through a lot of changes and everything like that. Like the intro is very it just starts out at a certain pace, kind of slow or whatever, and then it like the first verse kicks in and it sort of like builds the energy through that verse. Halford doesn't come screaming out of the gate. He just sort of like starts out like sort of like mid strength, I guess, and then the energy builds from there. So it's actually, I thought it was a very well done composition, apart from just being like good riffs and interesting harmonies and things like that and good performances. It was very well put together as a song structure. So that was like one of the things that stood out for me about it.
Yeah. That intro, the Hellion, it's just awesome. And that I can only imagine in the early 80s when guys like first heard that. It has that, you're like, okay, this is metal. You know what I mean? And then it goes into the song Electric Eye, which is about satellites in space spying on people, like the government overreach and through using technology to spy on people and invade on their privacy. And it was like this is before people knew a whole lot about government conspiracies and stuff, so that's something of note as well. But the song, it's just rule. I mean, this is kind of the quality of metal that gets lost on people that intellectualize things too much, artsy fartsy. Is metal is not trying to present to you anything too complex. We're here to invoke an emotion in you. It's very raw and primal and surface level, and it can be deep, it can have nuance, it can be intellectual, but for the most part it's not trying to be that. It is trying to captivate and force an emotion upon the listener, which it is kind of in the vein of, and Dio makes this case that heavy metal is the rightful heir of opera. Because if you go see, I don't know if you guys out there listening have ever gone to an opera, it is magnificent. It is something that you sit and you're just captivated by the power of the voice and of the orchestral section. It just lifts you and empowers you and takes you through all these emotions, and you don't get a choice. You know what I mean? It forces this upon you. And this is what metal does. And there's been people that I took to metal concerts that are like, no, I don't like metal at all. And I took them and I'm like, you're going to love it. And I don't care who you are. If you have a dick and balls and a spine, if you go to a heavy metal show, you're going to have fun. It is violence. It is raw energy. It is passion. It just goes hard in the fucking paint. And if you're a guy, you're just going to have fun, especially if you have some drinks. And that is what it's all about. So going to back to Judas Priest, this is kind of like what they were doing. And Judas Priest, they added the 2 guitars. They added the soaring vocals. It went hard. It was gritty. It was working class. They were singing about stuff that guys thought were interesting and were cool. And they're just like, we're just going to do metal. You know what I mean? So that's what it was about. And then going forward, I gave you 2 Iron Maiden songs. And you said that you heard Iron Maiden, but you didn't. What did you think about these 2 tracks? Because these are from 2 eras of Iron Maiden.
Yeah, this was interesting because I'm not really an Iron Maiden fan. Something about it, something about Bruce Dickinson is just not for me.
Why?
But I don't know. It's hard to explain. He's got a good voice, but I just don't like it. If that makes no sense, but it's just like I can see objectively. We'll get to that. We'll talk about Bruce Dickinson with the second track. I like the first Iron Maiden album. That's like probably my favorite Iron Maiden album. So I was really glad that you picked one from that record because I like that vocalist a lot better than
Paul
Dickinson.
Di'Anno.
Yeah. The first album is pretty cool. It was a good choice. Paul Di'Anno kind of somehow has, I mean, he's a metal singer. He has like the, he's obviously a very melodic singer. He's not just like growling or barking or screaming or whatever. But he does have some slight punk vibes.
He's punk.
I don't know.
Yeah.
He's got that, right? And it's not just like the way he dresses, like with leather and stuff like that. But he's got an authenticity about him. We kind of touched on, I touched on this only very briefly with like when we're talking about Ozzy versus Dio. He's got that authenticity to him. I think this is like why I don't like Bruce Dickinson is because something about the guy is fake. I don't know what it is. I just am not buying what he's selling. I don't know. It makes it sound like I hate him a lot worse than I do. It's not like that. I can get down with like some of the like Dickinson era Iron Maiden, but I like this a lot better for some reason. It's just more authentic. Paul Di'Anno just sells it a lot better. And this track in particular, which is Phantom of the Opera, I think this is probably like the flagship track on that record.
It is.
It's got great compositional structure. It's like an epic. It's like an 7 or 8 minute long epic. And you could just imagine, like, when did this come out? I'm going to guess about 1981 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even earlier. But you could just imagine this, like, just dropping back then when, like, metal was really only kind of getting back on its feet after what we talked about with the kind of bloat from the late 70s and everything. Like, Zeppelin had been shitty for many years, and you had these these like corporate rock sort of like metal bands. That was like what heavy metal had like been reduced to. And then something like this drops. It's fast, it's aggressive, it's got complicated, but it's still got like the metal aspects, the metal elements of like the, complicated guitar work and everything like that. And even like with the artwork, the like uncanny, weird ass looking artwork on the front cover, it was just like a whole different package, So you can imagine this dropping in 1981 and what a like just complete shot out of the dark that would have been. And I think that's part of what I like about the first album. A lot of times I find with bands, I like their first album. That's like my favorite album of theirs. Because, there's a saying in music where you've got 15 years to write your first album. You've got 8 months to write your second album kind of thing, right? So a lot of times when bands come out with their first record, it might be a little bit sort of, it might be a little bit kind of rough around the edges. They might not have worked all the kinks out quite yet. But a lot of times you just get this raw, unformed kind of thing that's like that is never quite recaptured on later albums. And sometimes a band's first album is wildly different from their later stuff. Not so much with Iron Maiden, but I like this album. I think it's actually their best. I know that's, a lot of Maiden fans are gonna be like, what the fuck? But yeah, I don't know. That's just like how I feel about it.
Yeah, hard disagree. Peace of Mind, Power Slave, those are, dude, Bruce Dick. I don't know why you think Bruce Dickinson's Fugazi. That guy's he's just like all heart. I don't know if you ever seen like an interview with him. He's just total ADD, full of energy, just loves it, and he just is. And he's a like notorious guy that he's kind of a diva. You know what I mean? And I don't guys that are divas are generally like, we're talking about Ritchie Blackmore. Ritchie Blackmore is just like a nasty piece of shit, but that's really who he is. You know what I mean? He's not hiding it. Bruce Dickinson is this overwhelming talent. Excuse me. He's a pilot. He's like a writer. He's like all of these things. He's just this geyser of creation. And the guy, I saw him in 2004 or 5 or whatever, way past his prime. You would have thought you were watching a guy that was in his 20s. He's running across the stage. He's leaping into the air. He's got, they play the trooper. He comes out with the British flag, waving it. He's screaming. He's getting fans all riled up. The guy is just a master performer. Fantastic. You know what I mean? Like, I understand where you're getting at. Paul Di'Anno has that more, is a little bit more archaic. Like, he's like before metal vocalists became he's got the operatic quality to his voice with the big fat wide falsetto, but he's also kind of punky. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? He's got the rasp of the punkiness, the hardcore.
Yeah. I don't know, like with Dickinson, it's just maybe it's like the note choices or something like that. I just like it just doesn't grab me. And one of the things that I can say about Dickinson that's a little bit more objective, like quantitative, maybe we could say, is that like he does have a great voice, and he does like it's not like King Diamond where it's just falsetto. He's got he's definitely got like the grit to his voice, and like he's got a little bit of texture kind of going on, like when he hits those high notes. But when I listen to Dickinson, I always feel like it's going to go like into the stratosphere, like Rob Halford or something, or like a Chris Cornell or something, but never does. And I think that's what it is that like I think kind of gets me. You know what I mean? I just sort of expecting something that never comes. Like it never goes into that head voice. You know what I mean by the head voice? That's what we talk about when we that's generally what people mean when they say falsetto, which is actually a bit of a misnomer, but where you're not quite singing from the same part of your throat. It's like Rob Halford gets the head voice. He goes like way fucking high. I always kind of expect that Dickinson's going to do that, but he doesn't. And it's like, I don't know. It's just giving me the tip, man. I'm wait, it's just, I don't know.
There are some songs he does get up there, like the song I put on, Flight of the Icarus. He gets up there. Obviously, Aces High. He gets up there. But you're right. He doesn't really go into that like face ripping, shrill, screamy falsetto that Halford and Ripper Owens and some of these other guys.
Iron
do.
Maiden's just begging for that though. Like that's just like what it fucking needs. I think that's what I don't like about Dickinson is like, okay, he's really good and like I can't take anything away from the guy and everything, but there's just something, it doesn't go like the place that I want it to go. And whatever. I don't know. I'm not a huge Maiden fan, so like, take that for what it's worth, but it just kind of feels like it's not going there. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
But overall, the sound of Iron Maiden, the two guitars, the heavy bass. Steve Harris as a bass player, really brought something. Their drummer, I believe Nico McBrain was their earlier drummer, and he actually just continued that. What's the guy from Motorhead's name?
The singer Lemmy.
drummer
or Phil,
Motorhead.
the drummer, Filthy Phil something or other.
Phil Taylor, I believe.
Yeah.
Is that his name? Phil Taylor. I'm gonna look it up real quick. But
I think it is Taylor. But yeah.
Yeah. So Phil Taylor. I'm gonna look it up. Phil Taylor from Motorhead. Yeah. So what Phil brought was he brought double kicks. You know, Phil, like, what was that one song? It starts out as like it's a very early Motorhead song. It starts out like it has the double bass. That was like the first metal double bass that changed the game. Motorhead is one of the most important new wave of British heavy metal bands, rock bands, period. These guys came in like a storm. They took punk, they mixed it with hard rock, and they were just an entity of their own. I didn't put a Motorhead song on the list because I knew you're a Motorhead guy.
You didn't need to.
I didn't need to, right? Yeah. And Motorhead's another band. People think they hear Ace of Spades and they've heard Motorhead. You haven't. They have emotional songs. They have songs that have cultural commentary. Motorhead is a excellent, very versatile band, and you if you haven't done a deep dive into Motorhead, you should.
Dude, yeah. Should. Get yourself No Sleep Till Hammersmith. That's a great introduction. It's like our live record from, I think, right after Ace of Spades or something. And it's just the greatest hits. It's like Motorhead greatest hits. They were a legendary live band, lots of energy, incredibly fucking loud. And it's a great performance. So anybody that like wants to, like, they're my favorite new wave of British heavy metal band by a long shot. And that's a great album to start with. But yeah, to sort of just tie up what we were saying about Iron Maiden, I actually did enjoy some aspects of these tracks here. I really like the first one, Phantom of the Opera, Flight of Icarus. It was nice, like classical theme to it as well. That was really cool. Like I just thought it was great how they kind of like brought that in, because it's like a little bit less. It's a little bit less well traveled for metal. A lot of metal goes straight for like the Gothic vibes, right? Like it goes for the like old, like Germanic kind of medieval sounding, or like, you know, aesthetic stuff, like in terms of like the content. This is basically like he's talking about like the flight of Icarus and like the Greek myth of Daedalus and Icarus. I thought that was cool. It really works for that song, and so that was pretty cool. It was a good song.
Hell yeah. And moving on, another legendary new wave of British heavy metal band, Saxon. I gave you Princess of the Night, which a lot of folks are going to be familiar with. Have you ever heard this track before?
I've never heard this track before.
Yeah, so Saxon was a new wave British heavy metal band, and they were heavy. They had all of the elements that Judas Priest was bringing, except they had a very strong English identity. They had songs about crusaders and knights and stuff like this. But this early album is very much just like, we're a heavy metal band. And this song in particular, Princess of the Night, is about a train. It's
really?
It's about a train. It's about the singer was very.
Sorry, I thought you said tranny. I thought you said tranny.
No, train, like a locomotive.
Yeah.
I know. So what do you think about this one?
I thought this one was fucking great. This was like one of my favorite tracks on this whole playlist, to be honest. I'm aware of Saxon, but I've never listened to them before, and this was a great introduction. It's hard to explain what I really liked about the track. It has a great tune smithing to it, and like this is a little bit different than songwriting per se, in terms of like the chord progressions and like the choice of like vocal melody to go on top of it. It was great. It's hard to. This is going to be like come out of left field. But some of the and it doesn't sound like this band at all, but like some of the note choices, especially in the chorus, had like do some of the same things right that what Nirvana does, where a lot of it is just like a lot of times what Kurt Cobain will do is he'll sort of like land on the third note. So it's like if the chorus is like, you know, in G or whatever, he'll land on a B major or a B flat or something. A lot of times he uses the third, whether major or minor third, and that really, really works. It makes the song, it gives the song a tonality that is, it sort of like locates it in a key instantly, and you can kind of hear that. And this is exactly what's going on with this track. And I ended up like actually sort of like working it out on guitar sort of quickly, just grab the guitar to figure out what he was doing in the chorus here. And that's exactly what he does. He uses the third. So I thought it was great. It was like a real well-crafted song, well-crafted tune. I wasn't really listening to the lyrics so much, but it's great. Like this was one of the best things on that whole playlist, I thought.
Yeah. It's just a good tune.
Yeah.
You know, it's just catchy. It's this old school new wave British heavy metal. It's just a classic good tune. You can't,
like here's an example of what I'm talking about. I'm struggling to explain myself about like what works about this song. It's the kind of song like where if you like were playing, I don't know, take something like that Merciful Fate song or whatever, or you know, one of the other early ones like Legend, Wizard's Vengeance or whatever, and you put it on piano and you stripped away all the like heavy drums and everything and all the stuff that's like, you know, the trappings of metal, the stuff that makes it sound aggressive. If you just played this at a slow pace and you sang the same melody, it would still work, right? That's not really the case for a lot of metal. But it would work for this track, and I think that's what I really mean when I say like it's a well-written song.
Oh yeah. So yeah, Saxon. If you guys haven't heard Saxon, they're just a great band. They have another long history that goes through. They were one of the bands that survived into the glam metal and kept touring, and they didn't get knocked off, right? And speaking of bands that kind of survived under the current. Here's a band. This is a little bit esoteric. This is like a band that had nothing more than a cult following, but was hugely influential on musicians. And this is Manila Road. Have you ever heard of these guys before?
I've never heard about Manila Road before this.
Yeah, so Manila Road was started by a guy from New Jersey named Mark the Shark Shelton. Mark the Shark, I believe it was just him and his buddy started this music project in the late 70s. And I think they were janitors. They were just like regular jerk off guys. They just started making music in their basements, and they created Manila Road, and it started out a little bit more rocky in the beginning, and then got heavier and faster as time went on. And it was something that it's very underground. It's not very good production. It never got radio play. It never ended up on MTV. It just got popular among guys that traded tapes. It's hard to describe. There are these it's almost like a cult classic B movie or something, where Manila Road just kind of got endeared by people that liked the creativity and authenticity and the kind of the fact that it was just from a couple of jerk offs, and they got more popular as time went on. So with Manila Road, you might not, if you go out into a crowd of fans of a big band, most of the guys in the audience might not have ever heard of them. But if you go backstage and you talk to the guys that were playing, like 9 out of 10 of them would be like, yeah, I love that album. Manila Road was my jam. You know, hail Mark the Shark, who actually passed away recently. And speaking of bass publishing, Mark the Shark, if we're going to talk about it in this thing, Mark the Shark is an absolutely massive fan of sword and sorcery literature. He loves fantasy. He is all in with the weird psychedelic stuff, antediluvian shit. And there's a company, an indie publisher that's sort of in our spheres called DMR Books, and they have a series called Swords of Steel, and Mark the Shark Shelton actually wrote stories in there. So he's actually hilarious. Yeah, he was actually a like pulp writer, a sword and sorcery pulp writer as well, that was sort of in our spheres. Now, unfortunately, Mr. Mark passed away recently, but in his own right, he was just a cool ass dude, a very creative guy. So what do you think about this track? This is a track that doesn't really slap with a lot of people because he's got kind of a weird nasally voice. He's it's not very good quality. So what did you think about this?
Yeah, this was not my jam either. It was cheesy. Like everything cheesy and not really in a good way, especially the artwork. It's like, I don't know. It didn't really stand out to me. Again, there's like some good energy to it in terms of like it's fast paced. There's, the riffs are pretty like overwhelming or whatever, but didn't grab me. Something, yeah, I don't know. You're gonna hear that from time to time throughout this playlist, because this era of heavy metal, some of it is fucking amazing, and some of it is just not. For me, anyway. This was kind of a miss for me. This track.
I love the cheese. I think the cheese is fantastic. I can't get enough. I wish there was more cheese. Like I don't know. I'm into it. So Manila Road, guys out there, give them a listen, because it's like an underdog story of a guy that just like loves this shit, and he's not scared of being cheesy. He's just writing what he loves and what he thinks is cool and based and imaginative, and it influenced a lot of people. So go check out Manila Road. Very long discography. He's very, very prolific too. They wrote tons of albums, tons of stuff.
Really?
So moving on.
Cool.
Here's one. I gave you 2 tracks from the legends, right? The gods of heavy metal. Manowar.
Yeah.
What do you think about Manowar?
Well, I thought Manowar was pretty fucking cheesy too, but somehow in a very, very good way. It just works. I don't know. Like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but Manowar nails it. I mean, okay, the guy's got a great voice. This is a huge part of it, right? Like the singer is just amazing, like an amazing vocalist. This is what I think of when I think of power metal, right? Like it's stuff like this. This was, it just kind of hits. It's so weird about music. It's so subjective, but it's also like it's impossible to put your finger on what makes a song work and what makes a song completely flop. The individual elements in this track are not actually all that far removed from like the last one or whatever. And I don't want to pick on Manila Road or whatever. That just wasn't for me. But this one, like, I get it. Like instantly, I understand. And there's something very European about this. There's something very archaic about it. There's something like it just calls to mind. Like you just get Conan vibes from it. Like just listening to it. And like the artwork is pretty cool, actually. Like that's another bonus of it. But this was a real winner. This one, Battle Hymn by Manowar. Anybody that wants to like listen to some serious 80s metal that's not familiar with it, this would be a great place to start, I would say. Yeah.
So Manowar is a band that the industry and the goblins and Hollyweird and they hate Manowar. Manowar is a band that never got any radio play. I don't know. I think to this day they've never been played on the radio. They got very little industry support. They literally put the whole thing on their backs and through just relentless touring and just going hard, like endeared themselves to the world, right? Manowar could set up a concert anywhere on the planet and tens of thousands of people will show up. The Mana Warriors will descend upon that venue. It is incredible what Manowar has accomplished. And you mentioned, yes, it's cheesy. Yes, it is. You know the comedian Brian Posehn?
Yeah.
He is such a he said, I don't like Manowar because it's proto-fascist, male power fantasy. The people like him talk all kind of shit on Manowar because he's right. It is proto-fascist. It is a masculine male power fantasy.
Yeah.
All of their albums, which are drawn by Ken Kelly, the famous illustrator, just big jack dudes, barbarians, ladies with huge tits, just like monsters getting slain. And all of their songs, all of their music is like a dedication to their fans. This is something that they do that they share with bands like Rush, where Rush is like a band for the people, right? They say, you're a lot better than you think you are. You're a working man, or they say because I'm a working man, I'm a lot better than I think I am. I play this music for you. You like they're like talking to you, the listener. And it's like it's an intimate relationship. Manowar does the same thing, but instead they bring it to a level of power. They say that the world is against us, and they give us everything that they can, and there's nothing they can do to stop us, for we will destroy them, we will kill them, we will be victorious. And that's just the way that it is. Like it's over and over and over again that they just give you this power as the listener, right?
Yeah.
And it's very evocative, it's very enchanting, and it's just fucking based. You know what I mean? And I fucking love Manowar. And
no, Manowar is awesome. It's just unbridled, unapologetic masculinity, and I think, there's a very famous picture of them that like often gets trotted out as like examples of like how like cheesy 80s metal and everything. It's like each one of the guys is like shirtless and like they're wearing like, I don't know what you call it, like
a loincloth.
Loincloths, that's it. Yeah, that's the word. And they're all like pretty jacked. They're actually pretty fucking jacked.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is everything that like these fucking Hollywood faggots and the whole industry hates. They fucking hate it, right? It's unapologetic. It's masculine. It doesn't give a fuck. It's just going hard, and it's just going for it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So this is, I think, probably why Manowar basically, I won't say got nowhere. They obviously have had a great career, but they've had no help along the way. And I think part of the reason for that is because of the aesthetic that they put forth. Like even at the time, even in the mid 80s, and early 80s, when this was something very popular, like the Conan albums, the Conan movies were like a real cultural touchstone around this time. This was something very popular at the time, but still a little bit on the edge. Like, you weren't really allowed to like this kind of thing too much. You could kind of like ironically like it, but you couldn't like it that much. You couldn't like it for real, not for real, for real. Manowar kind of gives you the license to do that. And I think this is part of why they're dangerous, and this is why people didn't like them.
Yeah. And their songs are just
why certain people didn't like them anyway.
Yeah, and I gave you two songs from two eras of Manowar. And what's really interesting about Manowar is this is what a critique of them is. A lot of their songs start sounding the same. They use the same formula. They don't really change, right? So the only thing that really changes is they get better production value, and they start adding in more things like they'll have like some sort of what's it called, like choruses, like vocal choruses, and you know what I mean? They're just like wholesome dudes as well. They're that, and that's another thing that pisses off the mainstream, is that they're not out here banging all these chicks and doing all these drugs. And maybe they probably did some of that. I don't know how much of it that he really did. For example, the singer Eric Adams, that's not his real name. His real name, I can't remember. He's an Italian guy from New York. And he named himself Eric Adams because his first two sons are named Eric and Adam. He named himself after his sons because he wanted to carry that with him. And that's just, and he's an outdoorsman. He's like a bow hunter. He's like a fitness advocate. You could tell the guy's like 60 and he's like still and just yoked, So it's like these guys, they're like, take care of yourself, become strong, go to the gym. Don't worry about what the world is trying to hoist upon you. I give you that song, Heart of Steel. Have a heart of steel. Say what's on your mind. Speak the truth. Live by your heart. Even if the world is against you, fight it alone because they can't stop you because they're evil. we're not in an age of kings, but you can be a king. And like, it's just fucking based. And like anybody in our spheres that listens to Manowar, I don't know how you could. That's why they're so popular among our guys. Like on my Telegram, I post about Manowar, and it's like one of my most popular posts. The guys just come out of the woodwork about it. So what did you before we go on and on and on? What did you think about these two tracks? I give you Battle Hymn and Heart of Steel.
Well, I was wondering when I was going to get a power ballad out of you. 10 tracks in, we got one. No, I don't like the power ballad. I find them not to be very, like, it doesn't rouse me. It doesn't, like, generally, I find them to be not very emotional, but that's just me. But it's done very well. The vocals, again, were just, like, absolutely epic, and the performance is really good. I didn't think, like, I generally find that the songwriting, like, again, the tune smithing, shall we say, as I mentioned about the Saxon track, not that great for a lot of 80s metal power ballads. It's just not for me. But I loved that first track, that Battle Hymn. I thought that was just unbelievable. And there was even like redeeming qualities about Heart of Steel as well, like the ballad. It's got a great sort of build up. The first half of the track is basically, kind of like an acoustic or like with piano, and like then halfway through the track really explodes. So yeah, well done and everything. It's just that's not my thing. I almost never think power ballads are good, but that one was pretty good as far as they go. That was probably a 7 or 8 out of 10, I would say.
Best power ballad ever written, in my opinion. I don't really like ballads either. Some of them are like, I think like a soft song is okay, but I really hated because I don't know if you remember this was back in the 90s when they were still trying to cash in on the last of the glam and arena rock. They make monster ballads of rock. Yeah. It was just gay. I hated it. So moving on, Manowar. They can't stop us. Let them try. For heavy metal will die. Shout out to all the Man Warriors out there. So the next few songs I gave you Metal Church, which is a band that's sort of at the tail end of new wave of British heavy metal, but comes in the thrash era as well. What do you think about this one?
This one was kind of interesting. I had to listen to it a couple times. The first time, it didn't really stand out that much for me. I mean, the voice was great right off the bat. The drummer was excellent. I think he was the highlight of the whole track, really. Great performances. I really liked it a lot more around the second time. It's obviously it's a metal track, but it kind of, there's a lot more rock going on in there than it kind of seems like at first or whatever. Like you can, with the ending, like you can almost hear, it kind of sounds a little bit like Moby Dick or something, you know what I mean? Like with those like stop and start riffs and like the drummer just doing his like drum fills and everything. It's just awesome, actually. So I thought that was really cool. I quite enjoyed that track. The second time around especially, but I like that it's like, it's a metal track, but it's also like, it's got a lot of the things that this like rock does right. That track does right too. So yeah, that was really cool. I'd say that was one of the ones that was like, stood out for me a bit more amongst like this entire playlist.
And then we got Dio, The Last in Line. This was at the height of Dio's solo career. This is after the album Holy Diver. This is the album that comes after that. This is like one of my favorite songs of all time. It's just peak Dio. Vivian Campbell on the guitar, who was just not Vivian Campbell. Was it Vivian Campbell? I can't remember. His guitar player who was kind of like Dio's Randy Rhoads. This was just a tremendous period of Dio is just like immortal. You know what I mean? He starts out way back in like the 50s with Ronnie and the Red Caps. He goes into like more psychedelic stuff with Electric Elf. Then he joins Rainbow. Then he
Electric
goes into
Elf. I was not aware of this band.
Yeah, he had a band called Electric Elf, and then they
That
had some
sounds
sort of
hilarious.
copyright disagreement and just became Elf. So that was, yeah. So he had Dio is just this guy that just would not die. He was completely immortal through all of these eras. What do you think of Last in Line?
It didn't grab me like the other Dio track, the rainbow one did. The video is kind of hilarious, actually, because it's like one of the few tracks that you threw me where it's got a music video or whatever.
I love the video.
Yeah, I know, it's hilarious. But it gets like it's for me. This track kind of starts off, and it doesn't grab me, but then it gets great later on. You know what I mean? Like when he really starts ripping into it, and like everything kicks in and gets super heavy or whatever. I thought that was it gets much better like later on in the track or whatever, but I almost skipped it at first, to be honest. But it's got a really cool sort of like chorus to it. Again, it's got a great great chord progression. It's hard to explain. I don't know. It kind of does something a little bit different in terms of the chord progression than what you normally hear, and it's actually got keyboards that work a little bit in tandem with the track, which is kind of unusual, I think, for like this genre of metal. Like, but they're not overdone, right? They're just kind of, they add to it, but they're not like, it doesn't overpower the track or anything. And the guitar work, like the solo and everything, is very good. Like he's a great guitarist and everything. This is probably not one of the ones that I would put at the top of the list as far as of this entire list that you sent me.
Yeah, I love this song. I love these Dio albums. I think that they're just magnificent. They're just classic, authentic, old school heavy metal. Dio delivers something similar to Manowar does. You listen to this song, Last in Line. You listen to the stuff off of Holy Diver. He carries a lot of that rainbow with him, right? Like he never worked. Definitely. He never worked with John Lord from Deep Purple, but this residue of John Lord gets brought over into Rainbow, and that had such an effect on Dio that he carried that keyboard, that organ sound with him through his whole career. So there is a direct lineage from John Lord to Rainbow in the Dark, and it just never goes away. And it's one of the things that is iconic about the Dio sound, but his songs are like, like this song, we're off to see the witch. We may never come home, but the magic that we'll witness is for a lifetime. He's, we're evil or divine. We're the last in line. He's like saying, we're going on an adventure to face this great evil. We might never come back, but we have to do it as our duty because we are heroes. And it's like the same thing with like Holy Diver. The Holy Diver is a guy that's there to slay evil, and he might never come back, but he has to do it because it's his duty. And this is something about the Dio message is he takes you to this world of imagination. He takes you to this world of fantasy because he's invoking the mythopoetics upon you, but he's also empowering you in an age of mundanity. He's saying that, despite everything in your life, you are a hero. You can become a hero, and adventures are important, and to be powerful is important, and magic is beautiful, and mystifies the world. And he gets described as a wizard all the time, and he was a wizard. I actually met Dio at the show. I went to a show's Motorhead, Dio, and Iron Maiden in 2005. I can't remember, but I actually got to meet him, and it was incredible. The guy is just big heart. He gave me a hug. You know what I mean? It was just like, it was a really special thing. The guy was like 5'2". Like, I'll be honest with you. He's
pretty short, isn't he?
He's tiny. He's this tiny little guy, which he's sitting behind this table. I stood in line forever. I didn't have anything to sign. I just wanted to shake his hand, talk to him. And I get to him, and I don't know what I said. Because Dio was like my hero. You know what I mean? He was like my favorite. I grew up listening to him. He was an important part of my life through my shitty childhood. So it's like I get to him. I was like completely starstruck, and I just like spit out a bunch of jumbled stuff. I got weird and emotional. I was awkward and weird. You know what I mean? I don't get awkward and weird. That's not my thing. I'm usually cool and the guy that says the cool thing.
But then you don't meet Dio every day either, do you?
Dio every day. And he was like, he got up from his chair, and he might have, from sitting down, he might have like got like 5 inches taller. And he comes over, gives me a hug. He's like literally like up to my chest, and he gives me a hug. And I was like fucking based. You know, it's like this guy really cares about us. So, you know, and he was like, he raised money for autism. Him and his guitar player did like a bunch of shows raising money for guys that were just like families that were displaced in the Serbian war. And like just all this kind of, he just had a big heart. He was a good guy. And that was very different from the glam metal of that time, where those guys were just like pieces of shit that were like fucking dudes' girlfriends in front of them and doing huge lines of blow and pissing away all their money, and we're just completely just degenerate pieces of shit. And Dio was the opposite. So if I fuck with Dio. So moving on, I gave you Queensryche. I'm pretty sure you're probably not going to like these guys, but they are. You have to, if you're going to talk about heavy metal and you're talking about heavy metal vocalists, you have to mention Jeff Tate. What do you think about these tracks?
Yeah, it kind of didn't grab me either. You're right. Queensryche is not my thing. To be honest, I could not figure out why he was so renowned as a vocalist. I mean, he's certainly not like, you know, he's like a slouch or anything like that, like by any stretch of the imagination. But it kind of didn't grab me like the way that I was kind of hoping it would. But at the same time, I knew that it was probably not going to be my thing or whatever. But yeah, still, I mean, there was some enjoyable aspects to the tracks. There was some pretty good vocal harmonies, especially in the second track. Again, I think like part of the thing that I liked about Manowar, and especially like the vocalist in Manowar, is that he's got like some real grit to his voice. He's really like, when he hits those high notes, he doesn't just like hit the note cleanly. He's just really just ripping into it. You know what I mean? And it doesn't quite feel like that when I hear like the high notes with Jeff Tate with Queensryche or whatever. But yeah, no, it was okay. It wasn't like, I wasn't like, oh, fuck, let's turn this off or anything like that by any stretch. It just wasn't for me kind of thing. I think the second track was a little bit better. What was it? Walk in the Shadows? Yeah. There's some definitely good, like, redeeming aspects of that track. Some good vocal harmonies and everything. But this was not one of the ones that really caught me.
So Queensryche is important to mention. Number one, because of Jeff Tate. Number two, because they are sort of the first American power metal band, right? They are classified as American power metal. So they really brought to the table. They sort of sound a little glammy. They have a lot of new wave of British heavy metal flavor, but they were like power metal before power metal got formed. So Jeff Tate, I saw Queensryche and Dream Theater opened for them, and I'll be honest, I thought Dream Theater was a fucking snooze. They were very, very good, but the highlight of Dream Theater was when Jeff Tate came out and sang a song with them. Like that was like their highlight. Queensryche, maybe I should have gave you a live performance. Jeff Tate is a natural baritone with an 8-octave range. The guy is just a superhuman vocal talent, one of the most magnificent voices like ever. If you ever see him live, he's old now, so he might not have it anymore. But when I saw him live, he still very much had it. I felt like there was like an angel or something before me. This guy, his vocal range, the way that he controls his voice, his false or his vibrato, that wide vibrato, it was just incredible, this guy. And he was, I don't know, he's just incredible. So Queensryche, in my opinion, is a very important part, but I kind of knew you weren't going to like it because it's not very gritty. It's very clean and pretty, And speaking of clean and pretty, let's go to the next one. This is a hugely important. This is power metal. This is a very important part of new wave of traditional heavy metal. What do you think of Keeper of the Seven Keys?
Yeah, this one I thought was actually pretty epic. I didn't know, because I've heard of Halloween. I had listened to a little bit of them at some stage. I'm not sure when, but and I didn't realize that they're a German band, aren't they?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yep.
I had no idea. That's amazing. This was an epic track, though, dude. It was like, how long is it? Yeah, how long is it? It's
13 minutes.
13 minutes. Holy shit. Yeah. I thought this was really cool. I mean, just like, not just the length alone, because like anybody can waffle on for fucking 13 minutes, but it goes through. It actually kind of reminded me a bit of like 2112 in its variation and its sort of progression between different movements and everything. It even gets a little bit Pink Floyd in the middle, which I thought was like awesome. I did not expect that. Like, there's like a section somewhere in the like towards the middle of the song, if I recall correctly, that like has got some serious like David Gilmour vibes going on. But yeah, no, I thought this one was really cool. Yeah, that's pretty much what comes to mind when I remember this track.
Yeah, this is, in my opinion, probably one of the greatest like rock and roll heavy metal songs ever written. It's literally it's like if you brought one of the classical composers of old and brought them here and made them create a metal song. It has great progression. It tells this beautiful story. The vocals are unbelievable. Michael Kiske back then was phenomenal vocalist that has dual guitars like Iron Maiden. It's got the aggressive drums. It's just a fucking masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. It's like Lord of the Rings. Like if Lord of the Rings was in music. So Halloween, Keeper of the Seven Keys, guys, that album is a must listen to in the heavy metal timeline. So
there's a lot going on in this track. This would be one I would recommend to guys. Like, I mean, anyone listening to this, you'll notice that I've posted I posted the playlist on YouTube in the show notes. So you're probably listening to it as we talk, but if you're not, definitely check this one out. I think this would be a good entry point for guys who are just kind of getting into like new wave of British heavy metal and like trad metal, basically.
So let's zip through the next one so we can get on to new wave, because we're starting. How long we've been? We're an hour 45. Okay. So let's zip through so we can get to new wave of traditional heavy metal. The next 4 songs I gave you: Accept, Balls to the Wall, Grim Reaper, See You in Hell, Fifth Angel, Call Out the Warning, and Raven Lord by Storm Witch. What did you think overall about these 4?
So actually, Balls to the Wall, that track was like one of the highlights of this whole list for me.
Fucking rules.
Fucking amazing. It's got a real like Bon Scott AC/DC thing going on. I don't know, like somehow I just never got around to like really listening to this track. I think I probably have heard the chorus at some point and that's it. But no, this was fucking amazing. And it's funny because like the dude, he starts out kind of sounding a little bit constipated or whatever.
Yeah.
Like he's just got that gargling, like, voice going on or whatever that somehow was going on in the early 80s. You hear it a lot.
Udo Dirkschneider.
But yeah, that's a great name. Great name.
He looks
like an Udo Dirkschneider. He does. Like he just does. Look at him.
Udo is interesting because he has this, like you say, he sort of sounds like late era, like Brian Johnson, AC/DC a little bit, but he's got way more range. He's really, really gargly and guttural, but he's also very high pitched. He's short. He's fat. He balded very early. He's not handsome. He's an ugly guy, but he is fucking based, and he's still going. He had a big, long career as a solo artist, huge in Germany. He is like their Dio. You know what I mean? You can go to Germany, you see a guy that looks a little bit metal, and be like, you know, Udo Dirkschneider, he's going to like, look, fuck you, of course I do. It's like, they've probably seen him 10 times. He is their guy in Germany. So you could go
with
check
that
out.
name. I mean, how could he have failed? I mean, that's just a guarantee right there.
And he's got, dude, this guy
career.
just has hits, dude. This guy writes songs. He's got, you know, everything from Accept. You got going to the Udo era. You got Metal Heart. You got fucking Animal House. You got, he's got just so many good songs. He did a song with Duro Pesh. It's like a love song, and it's one of the weirdest like songs you've ever heard, but it's kind of good for some reason. I don't know. I fucking love him. I think he's great.
No, this was great. I love this track. This was one of the highlights. Like I said, it's got a great anthemic chorus, right? Like this is kind of rare in this type of metal. I mean, it's something that AC/DC did very well, and that's what this band reminds me of. But just great, like sing along, like chorus. You know, you just want to shout along with it, like through the whole thing. It's just, I thought this was great. I would totally this would be on heavy rotation.
And my favorite part is the guitar tone, that like old growly tube amp, like no effect. Because during this period, you had a ton of reverb and delay and like all these processors, and this guy just like plugged his fucking guitar into the amp and cranked up the gain. That's all that he did. And it just fucking rules. It's just classic.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. This is one of the better ones. Grim Reaper didn't really stand out to me. I don't really recall much about that track. Fifth Angel, I thought was pretty good. There was some really good energy in that one. Great production, great chorus. Overall, I thought that was really cool. What was the other one? Storm Witch, I think, was the next one.
Ravenlord.
That one was okay. It was a little bit silly at times. I thought, like a little bit cheesy or whatever, but nice album art as well.
And then going forward, there's a band I put in, Hammerfall, and the reason that Hammerfall is important is that these guys somehow, they were around they started in the late 90s and got big in like the 2000s to mid-aughts. And they got really, really popular somehow in this time that metal, like you mentioned earlier, this was like the great age of metal stagnation, right? This is the time new metal started coming out. This is when like Korn was out. This is when grunge was like still around. And this was not the time for this kind of metal, yet they still did it because they first of all, the Swedes are excellent songwriters. They are just they come from this pop background. Swedish pop music is just like they have this big emphasis on melody and songwriting, and every single Hammerfall album is like a greatest hits, right? It's cheesy, it's a little corny, it's over the top, it's all of these things, but it's like these songs are all earworms, right? So what do you think about Templars of Steel?
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. It's definitely like an earworm. This is like the chorus sticks in your mind like long after you've heard it. I didn't really like it. I don't know that I necessarily would want that, but I mean, it was okay actually. It was like I really liked the long ambient intro that was going on sort of at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. But I like that shit. I like ambient music. I like dark music. Other than that, it was sort of like all around okay. Like the voice was okay. The composition was okay, but it didn't really grab me. It does have that very like standout chorus, but not in a way that I really liked, but it's memorable. I'll give them that for sure.
Yeah, Hammerfall is one of the, I like Hammerfall. I'm not a big Hammerfall fan, but I could probably sing you 10 Hammerfall songs off the top of my head because, you know, they wrote such catchy you can't take it away from them. They just wrote good ass songs. You know what I mean?
This is a very catchy song. I would admit that for sure. Yeah, it definitely is.
Follow the Signs of the Crimson Thunder, Legacy for the Brave, Legacy of Kings, Riders on the Arm. I like sing all of these fucking songs. They just wrote great songs. And it comes because the Swedes notorious for writing good ass songs, and the Swedes carry that into the era of like when you get into like the melodic, the Gothenburg stuff with At the Gates and shit. That's catchy, man. That's catchy stuff. So new wave of traditional heavy metal. We have arrived after over an hour and a half.
Yeah, so, we getting into the new shit now. The newer stuff anyway.
So new wave of traditional heavy metal is a phenomenon that sort of doesn't make any sense. It is a completely underground movement. It was started with a few bands like Enforcer. Actually, a lot of it came out of Sweden with bands like Enforcer. Then you had, and this kind of plays into, I have this theory when I talk about my philosophy of hyper-romanticism, that the idea of localities and subcultures now exists in the virtual space. And new wave traditional metal is a phenomenon that was not born out of a locality like the Bay Area thrash or New York hardcore or British punk or new wave British heavy metal or et cetera, et cetera. It was born out of MySpace. It was born out of a cluster of musicians that followed each other on MySpace. And it started with bands like Enforcer. There's a bunch of bands from Sweden were kind of like the first to kick it off. And then you had guys from Britain and Canada and America, and tons of Canadian bands, tons of British bands, and it's just all from these countries. And they came together to create new wave of traditional heavy metal. And it is interesting. Now, not all of it is great. Some of it, in my opinion, is a little overproduced. It's not really as authentic and gritty as the new wave traditional heavy metal, the stuff that it draws from. But some of it is very cool because it is new wave traditional heavy metal. It is a genre of metal that you would think should just be extinct, that should not come back. And it's not coming back for just nostalgia reasons. It's like coming back because this is the original blueprint of heavy metal. And you just can't kill it. It just, you could go talk to guys that are playing some like weird metalcore, deathcore stuff and be like, yo, did you listen to Dio? Did you listen to Manowar? Did you listen to these bands? But fuck yeah, there's no way you can't get away from the sires of the genre. So it just like it's something that mystifies the supposed like commentators of metal and places like websites like metalsucks.com and Metal Injection, etc. They're like it's of a yellow metal journalism. Don't even want to talk about it. They shit on it. They just don't. Yeah, they don't fuck with it.
Fuck, man.
They hate it.
Because it's like, this is like paying homage to like the shit that they ostensibly like. I don't know. That doesn't make sense.
But what's interesting about new wave traditional heavy metal is that they don't ignore that death metal happened. They don't ignore that thrash happened. They don't ignore that Gothenburg happened. So these are guys that love the old school shit, but a lot of them started out playing extreme metal and playing thrash and shit like that. So they started, your bands like I mentioned, Enforcer, Eternal Champion, Visigoth, et cetera, et cetera. And I put a lot of these on here. Instead of like going through every single one, because I gave you a little bit of there's a little bit of variety here. So which ones did you think stuck out? What did you notice from them, Mike? Just gonna give me your whole vibe from the new wave traditional heavy metal from Visigoth down.
Right. So actually Visigoth, when that track came on, I just sort of like sat up and took notice. I was like, oh, this is a cut above basically most of the shit that had come before it. I was like, wait a minute, something else is going on. I looked at it. I'm like, oh, okay, this is new, like newer as in like, the last decade or something. I think, I'm not sure. But it's heavy as fuck. Like it really, the production is way heavier than like what came, from the rest of the list. The guy's got a great voice. Like it's not like over the top, like falsetto, like hitting into the stratosphere or whatever, but it's like a manly voice, not cheesy. I like everything about that track. I thought it's great chord progressions. It's got shredding. The voice that I mentioned, so good. It's got good dynamics, varied song structure. It gets like quite a bit faster in the middle as well. Like you say, I mean, it doesn't ignore that, thrash metal, death metal, and all that happened or whatever. And it gets sludgy as fuck at the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's the like, paying tribute to Sleep and Electric Wizard and like all this shit. We really need to do a like sludge metal episode at some stage.
I'd love to.
We both love that. But this track really hits that note at the end, and it's just amazing. This was one of the highlights. It might have been my favorite track on the whole list, actually. What else here?
Quick mention, the logo for Visigoth was done by our boy Dan Cap from the Furgan.
No way.
Yeah, he knows these guys.
Amazing.
He's friends with them.
Awesome. That's great. What else here? The song by Warrior Path, Avenger, I thought was pretty cool. It had another like ambient intro. I'll never turn up my nose at one of those. Great production, a great voice, like hilariously high, like obscenely high, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like Dio, but like the guy's got the head voice. It's got a little bit of a Master of Puppets kind of like middle section going on as well. It was like a lot of sort of like great parts going on. It was pretty cool. Let's see what else. What else do we have? There was a lot of cool stuff. I really like that track by Warlung, Black Horse Pike. It's absolutely sick opening riff, very Sabbathy. This actually, when I heard this track, I was like, I love it. This is awesome. But I don't know, does it really belong on this list?
Yep.
I mean, it is like traditional heavy metal, but it really reminded me a lot of the like stuff that came before like 1980. Like it reminded me a lot of the like, early metal, like Sabbath and Blue Cheer and stuff like that. But these guys, like, I don't remember how many views the video had, but I sort of took note that it was like, a few thousand or 10,000 maybe or something. These guys, this video should have 1 million views. It's fucking awesome.
Yep.
What else? Oh yeah, Fortress, the track Midnight Dream, very closely approximates the old school sound. I really enjoyed that, actually. I thought that was really good. Like, they really, again, like, what does it have? It's like got a few thousand views or something like that. It's way too low. It's like these guys could have come straight out of like 1982 or something. They've definitely got that vibe. I don't think that they're really doing a lot that's new, but in a way that's good. That's kind of like they're really just sort of hitting all those notes that you want to hear.
They're very
with a revival of, they're pretty much just doing the same thing, and they're doing it really, really well though. I thought this one was really cool.
Hell yeah.
What else? Just trying to think that I'm just sort of like scrolling through all, like there's got to be at least like 10 or 15 tracks. Or something like
I'm sorry, I gave you this
of the new stuff or whatever. What else here? I think those are the ones that I like the most. Riot City, The Hunter.
Those are like those guys are like the King Canadian new wave guys.
Yeah. Amazing cover art. Dude. The eagle has fucking teeth.
And like a laser eye.
And a laser for an eye. Holy Christ. And it's just like the voice is just so absurdly high. It almost like it's a little bit annoying, but it's like it's really endearing too. This track I thought was like, it was pure entertainment. It was hilarious. Not the kind of thing that I would like throw on to like really like rock out to while I'm doing my workout, although it is very high energy. It's got a cool spacey midsection as well, which I thought was kind of cool. And and it's like the YouTube channel that like hosts the video is called New Wave of Traditional Heavy Metal Full Album. So I mean, yeah, there you go. There's the genre name right there. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about each track individually, but those are the ones that really stood out for me.
Yeah, and a couple that you didn't. Another one, Sandstorm, which is very new wave traditional heavy metal, or I mean, British heavy metal. They're very NWOBHM. They're another Canadian band. They're a 3-piece, and they kind of do like this rocky. They're a little bit less 80s speed metal and a little more like in the vein of like something like Saxon with some more psychedelic stoner rock elements there.
Did you put that on the list?
Yeah, it might not have.
What was the name?
It's Sandstorm, Whips and Chains.
Oh yeah. That one that one I've got on this list. Yeah, it's like Sabbath, but like with a power metal singer or something like that.
It's unique. It's a little different than a lot of the other stuff. Another one that's a little unique is one that I put on here. It's a band called Lucifer. Which is,
when was that?
It sounds like Danzig with like Annie Hart from Heart singing. It's really unique. It's literally like it sounds very close to something like an early Danzig, but with like a really talented female vocalist. It's.
I don't think that one was actually on the list. That might have been one of the ones that was blocked or whatever. I do remember that there was like a female vocalist on one of them.
I think that was the only one with a female vocalist. Lucifer, it's a second from the bottom.
Okay, yeah.
Or third from the bottom. Okay. I don't really know a whole lot about the band. I just found that album and listened to it, and I was like, and it kind of gets like lumped in. This is what's unique about the new wave traditional heavy metal is it has all, you can find bands that sound like old school speed metal, like Riot. You can find stuff like Quartz. It's a little bit more rocky and spacey. You could find like there's stuff that sounds like Danzig. There's stuff that sounds more doomy and Sabbathy. It's kind of like all over the place, but it all comes from that era of like this anti-glam 80s, early 90s, sometimes late 70s, like from late 70s, early 90s era of like true metal that guys liked. And it's all over the place. It's really a fascinating phenomenon and something that I really, really enjoy.
Yeah, no, overall, I mean, like the new stuff really does hold up well with the older material. Like these guys clearly, they're not just sort of going through the motions. They really are actually channeling something in the old stuff. So yeah, no, I thought it was really cool. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, what's really cool about the new wave traditional heavy metal is that the money that was available for guys like Dio and guys like Metallica and guys like Saxon or Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, that money is nowhere now. The big label companies are barely even paying their pop stars. You know what I mean? So that era of touring and selling records and merch and all that is like gone. These guys are doing it because they love it. A lot of these guys have like day jobs and shit, right? And they have to like take off work so they can go tour. And it's starting to come back. It's starting to get as big, but the age of rock is like kind of over. The normies don't listen to rock anymore. You go and do it. You go to the gym or you go out in public. You talk to a Zoomer. They listen to. I don't even know what they listen to. They have it. I've talked to Zoomers that have never heard of Black Sabbath, never heard of Eric Clapton, never heard of Jewish Priest, Judas Priest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like it's crazy that this is happening.
Yeah, it's like. I mean, part of it has to do with the internet, obviously, and Napster and file sharing and everything like that. Part of it is just a cultural thing where people don't really sit down and just like listen to records like they once did. A lot of times music now is part of the background of our lives. So you listen to music while you're driving. You listen to music as part of like the soundtrack of a movie or a TV show. You listen to music while you're playing a video game. You listen to music at the gym. But like, I don't know. I can't think of the last time. And I'm a big fucking music guy. I mean, I used to play it. I can't think of the last time that I sat down and just listened to an album without doing any other thing than that. Whereas I used to do that all the time when I was a teenager. Maybe it's just that like time of life that I'm in. Maybe Zoomers are doing that en masse and I just don't know, but I doubt that they are. I just don't think that that's what's happening. So I think that music is made to accompany other things now. So this has kind of changed what it's about. It's changed how we consume it. And another thing that's really, this very prosaic and simple thing that's really changed how we consume music is just the advent of shuffle on your iPod or your smartphone. Like I remember when this started to become a thing and like when people started to really, buy iPhones or whatever. I remember my buddy who like was eventually became like my production partner when I was like doing music production back in the day. When he first got, because like we used to always just go over to this guy's house and we'd just be listening. He has this absolutely vast collection of records, and we would listen to records, and we'd be like, listen to Electric Wizard's Dope Throne front to back. We'd listen to like the first Sabbath album front to back, whatever. We just like listen to these albums. He'd throw one on after another. And then I remember when he got the iPhone and he got into shuffle and he just like threw on his iPhone and it would just like, this guy had a really varied catalog of music. He'd be like listening to some like Austin Powers style thing, very, very much into like the 60s and 70s music of all kinds. So there'd be like something like that, and it'd be followed by like Wolf Eyes, this like crazy noise, like harsh noise music, followed by, I don't know, Iron Maiden, followed by, Alice in Chains or something. And it was just like whiplash, one song after another. I fucking hate that. I absolutely hate the fucking shuffle. But like people don't really sit down and listen to albums anymore. Albums are still, from my experience of limited experience really of listening to like newer bands, like, in the last decade or so, bands will still kind of craft their albums in general with a kind of, as an album. So you kind of like, it takes you on a trip. So you sort of go from A to B. It's not just a collection of songs very often, but we're getting away from that a little bit more. Like it is getting to where albums are just collections of songs. So there's like, the shuffle, the aspect of music as background music, and the absolutely poisonous influence of file sharing. I want to apologize for old about that. I think that's terrible. But anyway, it is what it is. But these things have all changed how we consume music, and they've all changed how the music industry works and what is and is not viable anymore. So this is like, music is just different. It's not 1982 anymore. That era is just gone, right? At least in terms of at least
the mainstream.
The mainstream and like the structural incentives of the music industry are very, very different than now than they were back then. But that doesn't mean that guys can't still capture some of the magic, because back then there was just some more, there was a lot more interesting stuff going on. And there was a lot more interesting stuff because, in part, liberalism wasn't quite as, the cancer wasn't as far advanced as it is now. But also because, like you said, Dave, you mentioned that like music scenes were more like geographical and insular and everything. And there's something wonderful that comes out of that. Mm-hmm. So all these things were very different, but guys are still able to capture some of the magic of those times. And it's just nice to discover that there's this genre that I knew nothing about that really does do that and is able to capture some of the magic. Yeah.
So what I would say, you're right. The mainstream, like the mainstream way of consuming music. You mentioned the shuffle. Oh my God, I fucking hate it. I hate it, dude. My first music experiences were listening to vinyls and cassettes.
Yeah,
and I still Love that today. I have vinyls. My vinyl player is right behind me. I have cassettes on my thing. I still have CDs. I still watch movies on VHS. Like, I love these old mediums. And for a while, like, I just thought I was just like, like an old and I'm just the guy that won't come, get up with the times. However, what I didn't know until recently is that this is coming back in a big way. Streaming has like crashed back down to earth, and the novelty of it has I have a niece who is a Zoomer. She wanted CDs for Christmas. She wanted CDs. There's a whole like bunch of like these Zoomers that are like listening to CDs. One, because it has novelty, and two, they're like learning what a full album is. They understand. Like, an album is an entire experience. So this hyper romanticism is really taking hold. Like, there's some of these like doom metal bands. Doom metal is a huge contributor to all this, like analog recording and going back to a lot of this stuff, de-digitizing, because there's something that convenience can't compete with for certain people. The normies are getting dumber, and they're never ever going to get away from what is most convenient. However, like more intelligent, more thoughtful people are going back to things that give them this experience, because you can't. There's something that that convenience can't compete with, and that is quality of experience. When you listen to a full album on vinyl, nothing competes. You can't. That's the real deal. That's the real McCoy. You can't beat that. You can't get anything better than that. There's spectrums of sound that come out of your speakers. So there's like this entire new generation of audiophiles. I'm one of them. I have a vinyl, a Technica, Audio Technica from the 80s. I have a Kenwood receiver from like 1974. I have what are these MCR like speakers from the 80s. I have a full on, like, my speaker set, my audio setup is like a guy from like 1984. He probably, guys like that had this same setup that I got right now, because you can't listen to streaming. You can't get the same audio quality on YouTube, from Spotify, from wherever the fuck. I throw my vinyl on that shit. Sounds like the band's in the room with me, and I listen to the whole album front to back. It's an entire journey and experience. And there's just a huge contingency, a growing contingency of people that feel this same way. They want this human, authentic, real experience with music that streaming and convenience just can't deliver. So it's never going to go away. It's coming back in a big way, and that's just the way that it is. It's just you can't beat it. And from my summation, this is why the journo cucks can't figure out why new wave traditional heavy metal and doom metal and all this kind of like old school shit is coming back, is because the shit in the mainstream doesn't deliver the experience. It's not the same.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. And, I don't think it's me just being old here or whatever, but something has happened where in the last few years, and it's not just because of Imperium Press. It's not just because I don't have as much time as I used to have. For my entire life, I've gone from one band to the next, hopping from one, and then getting obsessed with like one band. Started back in the day with Alice in Chains. That was my jam. I was just obsessed with Alice in Chains. And then from there it moved on to Faith No More. And then from there it moved on to something else. And from there it moved on to another genre and another band, another genre, and another band. And it just keeps going on and on like that, where all I'm listening to for like 6 months is one band, or maybe a year. And then I latch onto something else. But something has happened in the last couple of years where I just am not listening to music almost at all anymore. The last one that I got obsessed with was Burzum, and specifically with the ambient Burzum stuff, like his like Prison Records and the stuff that came out like maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, which I thought was amazing. But since then, like I was listening to that shit back in 2018, right? And like that's when I discovered that. And then after that, it's like I still enjoy that, and that's kind of like what's still kind of on rotation or whatever. But I just haven't like moved on to anything else, and this is very weird. It's strange. It kind of seems like the fire is going out or whatever, but like probably that just has a lot to do with me just not being able to discover these things, not being into much of a position to discover this stuff. I have gotten a lot into dungeon synth, and I think we should do an episode on that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very strange. The main, not just like mainstream music, but it feels like music as a whole is kind of like losing some of the fire or whatever. So I'm really excited to discover that even though this is not my genre, even though it's not quite my cup of mead or whatever, that like clearly this new wave of traditional heavy metal genre it has vitality. It's able to capture this old school vibe. I would love to see something like this with like grunge, or with like some of the really cool like post-punk shit, or even like proto-punk. Again, we should do an episode on proto-punk, like MC5 and shit like that. There's so much vitality in that, and it'd be great to see something like that come back. But it's really cool to see that it is coming back with like, Priest and Maiden and all these great bands from that era.
Yeah, it's coming back. It's like I said, it's because the new way of doing things doesn't deliver. Quality always beats convenience for people like us, and it's like coming home. You mentioned how you kind of stopped. I had a phase like that. It's like a few years ago. I stopped listening to music. I completely stopped listening to music, and I stopped playing guitar. I just stopped doing it for some reason. I don't know. I was just in that phase, and a couple years ago, I came home. I like literally just like found some Black Sabbath CDs or something, and I started like listening to it again, and I like fell back in love with it. And it's just so incredible. And what I found, I was like, yo, fuck, there's no good bands anymore. Fuck, blah, 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 blah. I was wrong. I did some digging, and I found like just like back in the day, there is a badass underground, and like everybody has like the same idea that I have, like complete parallel thought. Motherfuckers are coming home. You know what I mean? In many ways. So art is not dead. It's dead on the normies, but it's always been dead on the normies. Like let's go back to like when the heyday of these bands. What
was on the radio in 1982?
Fucking
shit.
Like my like first like hardcore love of metal outside, like after like Sabbath and everything, was thrash, Slayer, Metallica, Sepultura, Metal Church, fucking Overkill, like these bands, Testament, Exodus, like these bands, Death Angel, these fucking bands like were the shit to me. And when these bands were out, it was like before my time. They were still kicking around when I was young, but in their heyday, at their peak, was they were competing with Glam. And if you turned on the radio during that time, you didn't hear Slayer. You didn't hear Testament and Exodus. You didn't hear Death Angel. You heard fucking Poison. You heard Cinderella. You heard Motley Crue and the rest of those fucking faggots. So the normies have never, ever been like listening to the good shit. The good shit has never been mainstream. It's always been underground. So don't like go out and like turn on the TV and expect to hear the fucking most bass shit there is. You got to dig for it. Like always. It's always been like that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that there's like good stuff going on these days. I just haven't had the time to like dig around and find it.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is just I haven't been writing music, because writing music really galvanizes me to like listen to stuff and discover things, because a lot of what happens is that I'll just, it's almost like R&D, you know what I mean? I'm just almost doing like research and development to find ideas and like just be like, oh, I like that riff. I could do something like that, right? Not exactly poach the riff or whatever, but just like take inspiration. But I haven't been able to do that for a while, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I'm sure there's some good shit going on in the underground that I just haven't discovered.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Mr. Mike, this was an absolute behemoth of an episode. I'm not going to keep you any longer. We're on 2.5. I knew this was going to be a big one. And you guys listening, thank you so much for letting me like nerd out on you guys with this heavy metal deep dive. This is something that's so special to me and is part of my identity, has been since when people say, how long you've been listening to metal? I can't tell you, like, I've just always had it in my life. It's always been who I am and part of who I am and part of what inspires me and informs my worldview and everything. Not just in music or how I make music or listen to music or how I understand art, but it also inspired my political and spiritual worldview as well. It's just a big part of my development as a human being. So I appreciate you guys for letting me spill this all this out on you. And Mr. Mike, thank you so much for taking all that time to listen to like those fucking 40 songs that I sent you. And, it
was very enjoyable. It was cool, and I hope the audience will listen to some of it too.
Hell yeah. All right, so we're gonna wrap it up, guys. Buy Imperium Press's new books. It should be out by the time this episode drops. It's going to be Imperium Press, Imperium, what is it called again? Something English verse.
The Imperium collection of the Imperium Anthology of English verse.
The Anthology of English verse. You guys are gonna love it. I love it. I'm a poetry enjoyer. I'm a poet myself, so I think his book is fantastic. You're gonna love it too. Make sure you grab it when it comes out. I got a book that's about to drop too. Actually, got 3 books about to drop as soon as they're done. But anyway, guys, buy books. Sub to the Gumroad over at imperiumpress.org/podcast. And I'll see you guys next time here on Culture Dad's Age of Sword Cassette. I'll see you guys next time.